work that she's done and others have done before us, and carry that on into the economic energy and really the education issues that we've seen across the state and in our region. You guys know me. I grew up in the Tri-Cities. I'm a local kid, went to public high schools, and then went off to Eastern Washington University, had to pay for my own way at Eastern by joining the ROTC program and earned the opportunity to become the top cadet out of the state of Washington to go fly helicopters for the U.S. Army. During that time, spent 22 years of moving up the ladder in several different positions as an Army officer at small, medium, and large multinational operations and organizations. Had a great opportunity to be with various people from around this U.S. and around the globe. With that, I take in mind to kind of bring that back to the city and the counties that I grew up in. I run because I want to give it back to the people that have inspired, have mentored me. I want to give back because I want to run to ensure that we have a great place where we can bring people together. And it's really on these three areas of education, economics, and energy that we want to continue to be the leaders in our state and our nation. On the energy front, of course, it's being proud of our nuclear heritage, to support our dams, to ensure that we are the center of the universe where we can look at the cleanup to clean energy projects that we're doing. We want to go ahead and do that and foster that in our education systems to ensure that we have the skilled workforce of the future. And hopefully we can get more detailed on that as well. And of course, keeping our communities safe as well as the economy. So I earned your votes here today. Thank you, Cecilia. Appreciate the time.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for inviting me today. My name is Ronni Batchelor, and I've been in this community as a boots on the ground person, outreach to homelessness, outreach to people with mental illness, co-occurring disorders, as well as health and welfare of this community. People that I've helped have had some severe mental illness or have had some serious health disparities and were not able to get the care that they needed. And I made sure that they were getting the basic needs met by helping them attain housing, helping them attain the care that they needed when they needed it, and here in our community. I see that there's a lot of gaps in services here. Workforce is really down, and we also have wait periods of up to 6 months or more in order to get in to see a primary care physician or to see a mental health professional. I worked with the police departments as the boots on the ground assistant for people that were involved in law incarceration, as well as our mobile outreach team, where they met people on the street and they had me come out to help navigate them into the systems that they needed in order to succeed. The reason why I'm running is because I see these gaps, and with COVID has really hard hit our elders. We're having people that are in their 80s, 90s in housing insecurity as well as food insecurity. They should not be there. And we should not see these issues start coming at age 80 and 90 where you don't have enough money to cover that. So those are the issues that I'm kind of looking at as being those that I want to champion for our community, because I think it's really needed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you. Just to remind everyone, this seat is currently held by Senator Sharon Brown. She announced last November that she was not going to seek re-election. And Matt, I think it was like just a few weeks, and you made the announcement that you were going to run for Senate. So why the quick decision to switch chambers, and what are your priorities going into 2023?
Well, thanks, Cecilia, for that question. It wasn't really quick in my world, I guess, to share some of our family discussions, because no matter what, when you make a decision like this, coming from a military background, it does have a lot of impacts on your family. So I wanted to make sure I reached out to a lot of the stakeholders that are in community friends of mine. But really, we joke about it, but my wife has about 99.9% of the vote in our family. So without the family support, I don't think I could get a chance to move up and work into this position. The time, the effort, the campaign, after learning the last 2 years of running at the state level, there's a lot to this, and it is a lot of events that take you away from your family. So it means a lot to have your family support and moving that forward. And to your second question, what do I hope to do? I want to continue a lot of the efforts that Sharon did on the digital side of the house when she was working there, but focusing really primarily on the Senate Energy Committee. I want to be not only the leader, if we can move the needle, and our goal is to move the needle to get more red in the state. And we have an opportunity for that, and to become chair of the Senate Energy Committee. So we can work with the advanced nuclear power. We can work and push priorities for the hydrogen hub that we need to be a part of, if not be the leader, and then continue to work the emerging technologies in that area. From there, keeping up with what she did on the Ways and Means, meaning Senator Brown did a lot of great work to get some funding into our area for mental health, for our roads, transportation systems, and then continuing that effort into our education system.
Great, great. Thank you. So, Ronnie, I think the first time we were sort of introduced over email, you submitted an op-ed that was actually wonderful, and it was promoting remote testimony. And I was
Yes.
just wondering, was that kind of a turning point for you getting into state politics? Did that open some doors that you hadn't had before? And then a second part of that question again is, what would your priorities be if you're elected? So a two-parter there for you.
Yeah, so I've had introductions into legislative, but I hadn't been able to attend because last year I was not able to walk. I had a lot of challenges around some health issues that have finally, now I can walk. Being on disability for years, I had cancer. I've had a lot of challenges around my mental health. I lost a son to suicide. But outside of that, it's like trying to get people to hear you. To me was the challenge. And so I want to be that person that listens. I want to be that person that is in our community, listening to the needs of our community and actually that heartbeat. Because there's a lot of people that are really vulnerable, and especially after COVID hitting us. So, getting involved and writing the op-ed about accessibility, that was a challenge for me. And it seemed to be a challenge for a lot of people, especially those with disabilities that don't have the ability to travel and make a day of it, and then may not be heard once they got to Olympia. So I think that was a huge opening of a door for people like myself to be able to get involved. And I wrote Mr. Boehnke on occasions, whether he agreed with me or didn't agree with me, at least I got a return of a letter that gave me hope that legislators will hear me. And the transportation bill I was working on as an advocate, people with disabilities as an advocate there. I became part of the beginnings of CDAN, Cross Disabilities Advocacy Network, with DRW. They gave us the space to be able to meet and the support that people needed who are blind, physically disabled, or have intellectual disabilities. We all came together in that platform, and we were working towards the legislation that we wanted to see pass for people that were in need. So that's where I began. My priority is a community. They're community driven. We have at least 25% of our community that's disabled. When they can't see doctors, when they need to see doctors, or their insurance doesn't cover a local doctor for them to see, and they have to go out of our area, we're taking that money out and giving it to other communities. The money has to stay here to grow here. Our doctors need to be paid and need to have we need to have those resources in our community so our community can stay healthy. Cancer, because of my own battle, and my oldest son lost his battle to cancer, I'd like to see a research center here because we have some of the most rare cancers. Mine was a 5% world population cancer. And I have no clue how that happened. Usually you see this in the lowest, the countries that are the lowest in economic value. So I'd like to see that happen. I'd also like to see a triage center for mental health where our officers don't have to sit 36 hours with one patient because that patient needs to get help. And we had an officer here not that long ago that actually drove one of our clients and one of our patients all the way to Wenatchee to get inpatient treatment. We don't have that ability here. And we need that ability here. We need to really strengthen our community by health, welfare, and give people the tools to be able to be successful here, including education, because we need our people, our professionals, educated here. And we need to open that up, that door open for a lot of folks that really want to work in these areas of profession.
Well, thank you.
Obviously, very deep involvement personally in health and human services. But you've got very little or none in legislative or governmental experience. Do you think that's going to be a handicap to you as you go to try to find ways to get the money to attack the problems you've just so listed?
So I don't think it would be a problem because a lot of my work has been with the Healthcare Authority. I've been to the Healthcare Authority. I've been part of steering committees there. I have people in different places in Washington, across the state, that have helped me do the work that I do. I'm not embarrassed or afraid to take on anything because if I'm not dying, I'm capable. And that's the biggest part of me, is that I'm bold. I don't take no for an answer because I'll find the answer. And I'll ask the people that I need to ask to step up and step in when I need assistance. I'm a self-learner, always have been. I would not be in the position that I am in doing crisis work. I came from disability, not having a job for years because I couldn't get a job because of the way that my disability was. I was really not hireable. But I surpassed that. I found the education that I needed in order to succeed in the job that I do. And I found the credentials that I needed, and I did the education pieces for that. I might be behind the curve on some things, but I'm definitely ahead of the curve on others.
A senator is a big deal job.
Mm-hmm.
And
it is.
Just tell us a little bit about your position on removal of dams, the price of gasoline. I guess we're not going to be able to do much about that, but there are just subjects like that. The fact that the Tri-City seems to be exploding in gunfire, and what are we going to get to do about that? Those kinds of things that are not at the top of your interest list, but I'd just like to know kind of how you feel about them.
As far as removal of the dams, I grew up in Washington. There's dams all across Washington. I think that the largest of our dams supply a huge need for us, and that's our electrical supply. We have the tribes that are very much asking for some of those dams to be removed. And I think that on a political spectrum, needs to be addressed, and we need to come to some kind of compromise on how can we help them, but yet maintain our dam systems. And I think that it's important that that brotherly understanding of each other and the needs of each other. So as far as the dams go, they're in place now. I'd like to see them in place. But if it, rubber hits the road, we need to figure out how we can compromise and how we can put in place those areas that our needs are first, so that we can continue to have the accessibility to the electricity that we need. That's one piece. Sharon Brown did a thing of smaller modules for the my mind just lost.
The small nuclear
Yeah.
reactors. Yeah.
And I think that
Welcome to the club.
yeah, thank you so much. But I think that that's really interesting in concept. And I think that I would love to explore that in terms of, I know that that would build employment opportunity across our not just our I think that across our district as well as our regional, that would create jobs for people. And I also think that it would strengthen our grid, and give us a lasting opportunity for electricity that we're going to need for another millennia.
So I'm going to change the subject just a little bit. I think one of the hot topics the last two sessions was police reform, Matt.
Yeah.
And they made a lot of reforms in 2020, and then they tried to adjust a lot of those, I believe, in 2021. So could you give us a little background on that and what your take was on how effective those were and what you see we need to do? And because Ronni, this is a segue. I think Ronni kind of touched on that a little bit herself. So if you could elaborate on that, that would be helpful.
Sure, and appreciate that. And I appreciate Ronnie's kind words as well. Spent a lot of time in the energy sector and a lot of energy meetings around the area, especially work with Senator Brown on that advanced small modular reactors. But Cecilia, the police reform was one of the biggest ones I think we've seen coming out of the task force that we'd actually set up before I got there, was to get at what we can do with reforming and really working together with our communities. We saw that locally. Chief Hohenberg was leading that effort. Frankly, was a model for the rest of the state, what we were doing here in the Tri-Cities, of how you interact, you reach out and really listen to community members of all cultural backgrounds, of places that people have come from, to try to really see what we can do to modify our rules of engagement and our reaction times, but really focus on training to a high standard within our communities. The bills coming out of the first session were pretty much terrible. I could tell you it went way too far. I think was an overreaction. When you talk to the majority party, when they were offering up, we tried to offer up amendments and discussions and things. We got really shut out of a lot of those discussions. It wasn't really a bipartisan effort. And frankly, some of the sponsors of the programs, I asked them basic things like, have you done a ride along with a local law enforcement officer? Have you gone out with the sheriff's department? Have you worked with individuals in your community? And most of them didn't. There was a lot of closed door, and even going to the academy opened my eyes in that experience, because I asked, because I've done those things with all three of our cities and even the counties that we worked with. So it's that experience, trying to get the front end knowledge that we can to make the best decisions within this. So the second session, we tried to go ahead and put fixes in place that we could, but I believe we didn't go far enough to get it back to some moderation, because you see the issues with, really, frankly, the worst one was the Blake decision, talking with our local law enforcement, where we're now legalizing drugs that are hardcore into our communities, and you're seeing that devastation throughout. The second piece was that criminal pursuit of our law enforcement officers, and now people are just going at unreal numbers of speeds throughout our community. I totally understand, and we're in the debate about the core of the issue was to slow down in our residential areas to protect people and not have all these law enforcement officers trying to go through this chase to maybe cause more damage. And that was really the intent, but it went way further than that, and I believe went too far. And really the last one was just the overall community safety that we're seeing. People are running into stores, stealing things, and we're not even responding. We're putting law enforcement officers in a precarious position of a gray area that they're now feeling liable if they respond to an act that may be to protect and defend citizens of our city. And I sadly think that we're seeing a recruitment of other states and other criminal activities coming to our state because of these laws. And we need to change that to continue to back our law enforcement officers, to showcase we have solid programs in place that we can hear our community reach out. We can integrate into our academy those standards that we need to have, and really uphold our law enforcement officers to the highest standards we possibly can.
Okay. Was there anything that Matt Boehnke said, Ronnie, that you wanted to comment on, or?
Yeah, so some of the things that I see on the ground are that there's no hands-on any longer. The only time that they can have hands-on is like if we sign a detention order on the scene. And so that means this person is experiencing a high mental illness, psychosis, and is not capable of making decisions. So we would have to write a detention order in order for the officers to be able to put hands on. The other thing is that in the criminal behavior, I've been in the trenches. I see what's happening, and a lot of that is stemmed out of necessity. When you see some of these, and I'm not talking about the high shoplifting, I'm talking about just basic need stuff. So we criminalize those that are just trying to get those needs met. When I talk with people in the community, one of the biggest things is being afraid of police officers. And I don't think that we need to be, I was married to a police officer. I get where their head goes, you know, and it's like every day he would come home, they're the criminals, we're the good guys, you know, and it's like, not really, because we have to ask ourselves, how are we criminalizing the vulnerable? And, you know, the needs need to be met, because we have people out there that are very ill, and trying to manage in regular society isn't available. But those that are doing the felonies, and as Matt said, going into the stores and stealing and, you know, walking out without any kind of penalty, that has to cease and desist. And so we have to be able to give our officers the power to be able to take care of those criminals, because those are high dollar criminals. And then we're also talking about some of the gangs, and the gangs here are American grown, and they're not coming from Mexico. They're not coming from other countries. They're culturally American grown. And I see that. And so some of the things that I talk to folks about are having these community forums regularly to see how we can combat those kind of things in their neighborhood, and having people involved with their enforcement or their law enforcement is a necessary thing for people to understand. Our officers are here to help us when we need the help. The fear is that retaliation from those that they're afraid of is going to happen. So we have to come to some kind of way of curtailing that, and being able to have people feel that they're valid and that they can actually be a part of caring for their community.
I mean, we're going to move on, but that's great.
Okay.
Thank you. That's really great. Go ahead, Ken.
Both of you have been talking about an issue that was created because the legislators didn't listen to one another.
Mhm.
And we've seen that nationally to our detriment. And too often we've had legislators who are busy posturing and not busy getting things done, not considering what the issues are. And I'd really like both of you to talk about what you have done and what you hope to do so that you can reach across the aisle, because let's face it, it's not going to happen this election in Washington State. It may happen someday. I admire your optimism that you may grow more Republicans, Matt, but you know, you got to, if you're going to get something done in Eastern Washington, and you're in the minority party, you got to figure out how to work in ways that the majority party looks at you and says, don't like all of his or her politics, but I can work with that person.
Mhm.
So I'd like to hear both of you say, how are you going to do this? And try to be as concrete as you can.
Why don't we let Matt go first on that?
Okay, great, Ken. I like to smile because yeah, it's an uphill battle definitely after the last couple of years, and going through COVID is a big extent that pulled everybody to their extreme. We all know that. The technology and our social media, as a technologist, we see that in the algorithms that are driving people into these vacuums, that they're seeing algorithms, bots, other things that are getting into their stream to where it's an echo chamber to people are just really seeing that reflection back on them, and it just expands them to be more extreme is what we're hearing. A lot of that, to break that down, you could see in some of the bills that I've ran. Probably one of the biggest is HB 1170, the best bill in the state of Washington. So if you happen to read that one, BEST stands for the Building Economic Strength Through Manufacturing Act. Made it through the state, and this was when the governor's a Democrat, House and Senate were all Democrat, and it never had an amendment on it. It passed through without any no votes. So it was unanimous through, first time signed by the governor. Governor's staff loved it. Lisa Brown was great to work with. And building that relationship, the key to having that experience at the state level, but also throughout the agencies down into our local level, so we can get that really, that bipartisan effort you're talking about. Another one is working with PNL on getting some funding out here in the technology areas that we're seeing emerging. And even the money we've helped with WSU Tri-Cities, expanding some of their programs, and even CBC. When you drive by, you might see a new building sitting there, as well as 2 new buildings out at PNL. I know Sharon Brown was a big advocate and helped with the LIGO systems we had out there as well. Peanuts Park, Lewis Street, interchange was a big benefit to the Pasco community at the time, and still is over in the 16th district, but it helped a lot in the 8th district in the Tri-City area. To get more specific, even bringing in Dairy Gold with that 7.5 million, and then the almost 1,000 jobs coming through there, expanding that into the Amazon, a market that we're seeing, and looking at the different areas of not only enticing manufacturing, allowing that green, clean energy coming to our community. I think are some of the other specifics. And I would leave you with one more that we offered up thanks to Dan Newhouse and his friend. We started a Tri-City Civility Caucus. And so then we've been meeting regularly throughout COVID, not only discussing the extreme views of each parties and the interdependencies of each one. We really have been meeting on a regular basis to find out, and even at the state, you remember, most of the bills come through with the process of that balance of powers, and that's what we're trying to fight for, is when you have a balance of powers, you'll make sure a bill can get read, it'll get amendment, it'll get listened to, it'll be worked out to where by the time it comes to the floor, almost 95, 96% of the votes are in agreement, and they'll pass through. And you see that with our records that we have. The bipartisan efforts that on broadband and the ones I've already mentioned before, and I could throw out, I'm on the, I just came off the Digital Equity State Task Force for equity throughout our community, especially in rural Eastern Washington, our communities of colors, and especially our Hispanic serving institutions that we're trying to work for. It reaches across the aisle. And I know one last one, Representative Davis really is supportive of our mental health issues that we're working with Michelle Gerber and the 509 recovery community of turning the OKGH into that one-stop shop that Ronnie was talking about and others. So those are those services we need in our community that we can help each other out. But hopefully that's detailed enough for you, Ken.
So Matt has had a lot of experience in the legislature, and he's been able to create bills. I've been able to advocate for bills. Part of that is the 988 1477 bill. That's a very important one for us. There's also the bill for ombudsman that I advocated that we have, because people need to know where to go to help get the support and advocacy if they're not receiving the benefit of services that they need to succeed. The approach that I had, which was accessibility, transportation, was with Coalition of Advocates. And we were able to reach out to both Republican and to Democrat and independent lawmakers. And they heard us. There was going to be a 15% cut in disability support. And what happens there is that if there's a 15% cut, it actually has matching dollars that goes with it. And we advocated against that because people with DD, developmental disabilities, as well as intellectual disabilities and so forth, would have been affected for their home care and the needs around their disabilities. So those are things that I worked with others that were against it, but found that the worth of that far outweighs the not having it, because if we don't have it, we're spending more money. So it saves in the long run a lot of money into the millions, because of the people that are utilizing these services. If they can't get these services, they're having to spend more money getting them somewhere where they're going to get the service. And it cuts down on the utilization of emergency services as well. So
Matt Taylor had another question, I thought.
Well, I was going to ask young Matt if there was any problems with our election system in Washington State that might be forced in on us from out of here, and what your position is on that.
Thanks, Matt. And you know my background as a cybersecurity expert. We've done detailed analysis on that. When we were pulled into, when I first started at the state, Secretary of State Wyman actually helped me get in part of her task force. So we'll look at an analysis of our system from top to bottom. She did a great job, and I appreciate her leadership. And frankly, it was our own party, I think, that was really rough on her, and the things that helped, I think, move her to the current position that she's in with CISA and moving on to President Biden's cabinet up there. But that analysis allows us to see what holes were in there from each of the systems, doing differences between all the 38 different counties. And even as late as last week, we got an update from Secretary of State Hobbs on some of the areas that we still need to look at in improvements. Was there an attack on our system? They were trying to. And I give you another example. When the Ukraine issue started popping up earlier this year, we had an influx of cyber attacks through the roof, almost 1,000% that came at our state, because the hackers don't know the difference between Washington, D.C. and Washington State. So we got wrapped up into this fight that was doing actually a cyber operations preventive war as they're getting ready to roll tanks into Ukraine and into the Eastern Front. It all came out and exploded into some of our areas there. So it allowed us to actually activate some of the emergency management systems that we have in the state, from Microsoft, Amazon, our civilian population that were called up to National Guard service. Two-star General Doherty and I were talking about it at the emergency management meeting last week, of a better response to an incident that we're doing in the state and around our region, working to go ahead and focus on some of those areas in our election security. I don't believe it's a technical issue that you're talking about. My stance is we can always beef up the computers and the things that are out there. My number one thing is always provide transparency. What people ask me about the issues you see from my seatmate and others that have kind of gone to other places around the country and kind of got caught up in the national issue here is that look at the transparency right here in our backyard. I don't know if you've been to the Benton County Auditor's Office, walked through the election. They give tours. They're really receptive. They answer all of our questions. I brought people with me just to know for myself. So when people ask, what is really going on in Benton County now that the 8th district, and I know we haven't talked about that real quick. We're actually in West Pasco now too in the 8th because of the redistricting issues. I thought one of you was going to ask me on that one. But so now I went over to Franklin County, did the same thing because Franklin actually the difference, they have a Dominion voting system there. And in that was working to see what upgrades were going on and the testing we're doing. We're right now, actually, both counties are testing them out. They worked well through the primary, and they're going to be really good for the general election. I don't think we have any big issues across, but of course, come November, I know the National Guard is already standing by. We have actually civilian agencies that are going to support us. We had the team from CISA on board, and that's the Computer Information Security Agency that Kim Wyman works for at the national level. We're meeting with them again next week to have the plan in place for October, November to ensure integrity of our critical system. And you know as well as I, if we don't have trust in our Constitution, it's one thing. We need to have trust in our election services. So no matter the outcome, no matter who wins, everybody can trust and we can move on and have that transfer, a peaceful transfer of power that we've shown this to be one of the greatest nations in the world in the history. And that's what I want to support and continue to support. And so I hope that answers your question.
But Matt, that belief in a secure and verifiable and reliable system is not what many in your party are saying.
Correct.
They are undermining it by rumor, innuendo. Now, when you met with the Benton County Central Committee and got their endorsement, was that issue raised?
It was, sir.
And were you able to assure them that the election system is valid and reliable?
I did. And frankly, like any other freedom of speech issues that come up, everybody has a right of their opinion and where they get their information from. I share as not only a subject matter expert that have done this for almost 20 years in the military, but also continue to teach Columbia Basin College in our next generation of the workforce that we're going into a more technical background of all different career fields. And I remind them, these are the things that we do. I literally teach how to hack into things. And the reason we do that is so we can know what the bad guys are trying to do and we can fill those holes. We like simulate, if you use a sports analogy, we do that rehearsal like on a practice football field. We scrimmage. So we try to play that red team, blue team game of where the enemy is going to come in, what's the primary target, what's the most opportunity there to come at us, and we build those defense networks in place. And then even if that occurs and that military side comes in, we have a continuity of operations so we can maintain that level. We can secure the data that's on there and then have that security in place so we can make it open and transparent and frankly accountable to each and every one of us across the state. Now, did everybody believe that? I don't know. There was a lot of people that still disagree with me, and they have a right. You know, Jack, they do that all the time with us when we're running this campaign. So
when you were meeting with the Central Committee, was there a litmus test of whether or not you believed Trump won the last election?
There was an idea of letting me know who I voted for. And I said, I voted for Trump. That was the question posed to me. Now, was that a litmus test of continuing to support? And I know you enjoy kind of the continuing down that path of questioning of the philosophies, the backgrounds of things, and even to the point of platforms. So what we can do as a party, continue to bring us together, as Reagan said, the big tent, and continue to open up to others in our community. That's the part that I believe in. That's the part where I know a lot of us still agree with. A lot don't. There's people who debate, and I tell them that's what I fought for in this military for over 22 years and gone to combat. It's like, you have a right to do that. You have a right to disagree with us when we're campaigning on these issues, but let's do it in a professional, civil manner. And let's do it in a way that we can do it by the way of looking at the facts, and we all agree, here's the facts. This is what we can do to change our economy, to lessen the gas tax, to see what we can do in our communities, to have that real solutions that are out there that are going to impact and lower our inflation, to make us strong again and be proud of our country as we look out, the next 10 to 20 years.
Thanks, Matt. We are going to have to wrap up pretty soon. We sometimes ask candidates if there's, like we would ask Ronni, is there a question you'd wished we had asked Matt Boehnke? And we'll ask Matt Boehnke, is there a question you'd wished we had asked Ronni? So I know that puts you on the spot a little bit, but is there something you wish we had asked Matt, or something that we, if not Matt, then something you wish we had asked you that we haven't asked yet?
I think that you guys are doing a really good job. And, just to bounce off a little bit about the security of elections and that, my sister's been up in Olympia for 30 years, and that's all she does is the cybersecurity. It's ever changing, and there's always new information coming out. There's new technologies coming out, all of that. And she was wrapped up pretty heavy during that time. And she expressed that it was very stressful for her in her job, but they defeated they defeated Putin, is what they said. And Matt, I'm glad that you got the opportunity. That would have been one of those things I would have hailed a flag on top of, it's like, hey, yeah. But as far as asking questions of Matt, I think that Matt does a good job. And I think that in his wheelhouse where he's at, and what he does, I think that he does very well. I think that, we've both had some of the similar experiences. I have family in military. I've worked in community since I was a kid, teaching illiterate how to read. And that I went to St. John's Baptist Church over in Tacoma as a child. And that's where I began with my boots on the ground, was with my mother in that church, teaching folks of color how to read because they couldn't even read their Bible. So it's very important to me to reach our community and to be there for our community in a way that supports them and helps them thrive. And I don't have anything that I would ask Matt. I think that he does very well in what he does.
Okay. What about you, Matt? Is there a question you have for Ronni, or a question we didn't ask you that you wished we had?
I figured Jack has a ton more coming. No, for Ronni, I appreciate the kind words, Ronni. When we first met, just kind of going off the bat like we have in the past, just being civil and discussion throughout. So I appreciate that. And throughout the whole campaign kind of circus that we go through with all these different events and crazy times and interviews and things that we do. I know we've been asked this before, a couple others, but I'd ask her comments on the current education system. If there's areas that we can improve locally or even state, seems to be one of the still big hot topics of how we utilize pretty much 53% of our budget now has grown into just education. So that's one of the ones I always feel, and kind of a two-parter there, Cecilia. That's what I thought you would ask me something about.
Sure.
Since it's a big
There's
part
so
of our
many
budget,
topics.
I figured everybody looks at where's the money going. What would Ronni think of that, or what areas can we improve in education?
Well, I can tell you, Matt, is that first off, we have all these industries that really need the professional education and higher education, and they're asking for that. But what we do is we end up throwing the brunt onto the education system as well as to the students, and the students carry a high debt when they're coming out, and meeting their basic needs as well as trying to pay those loans off is very difficult. So I think that industry needs to start stepping up and taking responsibility and offering funding for students that are specifically taking those courses that they need the education for in order to enter into that workforce. So I think that there needs to be some kind of educational relief fund that is created through industry. That's just one part. There's a ton of other stuff that I can talk about in our needs as far as what industries we should be educating for. Part of that is the medical. We need workforce. It's just not there. So, but across the board, there's workforce that is needed. So in every sector, we're finding a decline in workforce. And a lot of that is because our 401ks are not working out to be a retirement. You're paying more in taxes in your 401k than you did pay to the government. You know, it's like, okay, so I have X amount of dollars there and I'm only getting 2/3 of that, you know, and it's like, that's a big cut out of your retirement.
I think we should do our closing, if that's okay. And we had Matt go first. So Ronnie, how about 2 minutes for a closing? And then Matt, you can have your 2 minutes, and good luck to both of you. So, okay, Ronnie, whenever you're ready.
So I'm not being traditional in my run. The reason why is because when I've reached out and asking for people to donate to my campaign, financially, they have been strapped to the point where they're having a lot of problems meeting their bills. So I have decided that word of mouth is going to be my chase in this run. And I don't have a whole lot of money to spend on my campaign. So word of mouth is great. If you like me, please let everyone know. Tell them to vote. And I'll definitely hire Mr. Boehnke as a support factor in my win. So you have a job when all this is over with. Okay, Matt?
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Matt, your turn.
Appreciate that, Ronnie. And thanks again, Cecilia, and all the members of the editorial board for having us today. It means a lot to me to represent the citizens of the 8th District and continuing on in the shoes, like we mentioned, for Senator Brown and others ahead of us. The 8th District is a key role. We've coined the term #Mighty8th a lot, and I think it can be, and it will be. With me in the position up there, I'm looking at the firm belief that experienced leadership is needed and will be effective when we move it over to the Senate and continue to look at positions that we can have a lot more influence for the 8th District and really bring Southeastern Washington to the voice in Olympia. Not only in Olympia, but around the state. A lot of people are looking at what's happening in our communities, what's happening in the safety of our homes, our education system, as well as energy and in our environment. And we need to take the leadership position because we have a lot of those real solutions we're doing right now. Showcase a lot of the positives that you're seeing. And a lot of times, too many people focus on those negatives. We have the career technology and emerging leadership, but we see from WSU Tri-Cities or CBC and that workforce of the future, and showcase those fundamental core values that made us such a great nation in the past. My parents taught me these, and they were supported throughout my military experience. And now I've turned the chapter to try to be a mentor to the next generation. Coming out of COVID, I will leave you with this, is that we need to look at building bridges together again, getting people connected to showcase we can have a debate in a civil, professional manner and not look at really burning the house down. We can focus on each and every one of us, showcase our strengths, really listen more, and then see each other for a brighter future that I think we can have it. And I'm honored today to earn your endorsement and to see if we can go ahead and together build that coalition for a future that the 8th District is a leader in. So thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Matt.
Yes.
And Ronnie.
Thanks.
On behalf of Ken, Matt, Jack, and Cecilia and Annette, if you guys allow me to do it, I'll thank you all on all of our behalf.